Hey guys, welcome back, and we're going to be working on the second sheet today. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to zoom out Command 0, just kind of see everything that we've done so far, and Command minus 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 a couple of times. And what we're going to do is create a new artboard in the layer, and we're going to put our template underneath so that we can start tracing and working on it. So let's go ahead and do that. So go to the artboard tool in the toolbar, click on it, and just guesstimate a 9 by 9 inch artboard, and then in the properties palette you're going to go ahead and make that exactly 9 by 9 inches. Call it artboard 2, that's fine. We're going to go to the layers palette, and I'm going to unlock the blue layer. I'm going to select it so that it's selected, so when I place the artwork in the Illustrator document it shows up in layer 1. Go to File, Place, just like before. Find on your, wherever you've put it, I think I've put it on the desktop, exercise logo number 2 JPEG, and go ahead and place it. Make sure it's centered in the layer 1. Should be blue because that's the color of layer 1. Once it's centered and everything is correct, go back to your selection tool. You can kind of see it's all centered here. And then go ahead and lock that layer, layer 1. Click back on layer 2. Oh, just like before, let's undo that locking, open up, click on that actual design itself, go to the properties and change our opacity back to 50%. Just like before, we want to kind of be able to see through it a little bit so that when we design in black, we'll be able to see what we're doing. Go back to your layers palette. Now go ahead and lock it. And click on layer 2 so that we can actually get started. And let's take a look at our first challenge for this project. What do you see? So for me, what I see is just obviously just a circle. And then I see these lines, and there are 8 of them I'm counting. And it's pretty much the same line that goes across that's rotated 1/8 of the way around the center. So what I'm going to do is we're going to just start with a circle. We'll go to the ellipse tool, hold the shift key down, use the space bar, and I'm going to just approximately size this and let go. As you can see, we've got a white fill with a black out stroke, so I'm going to make the fill transparent, and now I've got just the black stroke. So that's part 1. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to just select, we're going to try to break this up into something simple. Like if I could just create this one line, I would just repeat it by rotating it around the center of the circle. So let's go ahead and do that. A couple ways to do that, but because we have a nice vertical here, I'm just going to, for this time, I'm just going to use the rectangle tool. And I'm just going to make sure that I kind of go outside of the rectangle, and I'm kind of trying to make sure it overlaps the line that's there. And there's my rectangle. And I know if I cut this away from the circle using the shape builder tool, I could actually get that to be negative. But before we do that, we are now going to take this object and we're going to rotate it around the center. So we've done this before. We're going to go to the rotate tool here. And remember how this works. We're going to take our anchor point and we're going to dial it in by holding the Option key down to, to a different location. We're going to click on the center. And when we do that by holding the Option key down with the rotate tool, it brings up our dialog. And we know that we want 8 of these. So remember, like before, 360 divided by 8. And we're going to want, so that's the direction it's going to go, and we're going to want that to be a copy. So we're going to go ahead and hit copy. And now we've got 2 objects, and I'm going to just do this and duplicate it again. Command D to duplicate the last thing we did. And I'm just going to keep doing this until I go all the way around the circle. And at this point, we can select everything with our shape builder tool. We are going to keep these and remove all this stuff. So select shape builder. I'm going to select this to keep. I'm going to hold the Option key down and remove this stuff. Remove that stuff. Remove this stuff. Just kind of go around and get this to be looking a lot like the design that we want. Still a couple things on the outside. Hope this is helping. Hit the space bar to pan because I'd like to see what I'm doing. I'm holding space bar, and that allows me to pan. And voila. I'm going to now go back to my selection tool and swap the stroke with fill. And this should be, not yet, but it should be grouped together. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to select it all and Command G to group it. And that is our design. All right, let's move on to the next one. Now, lots of different ways to go about doing this. Honestly, the easiest way that I see is I'm going to create a couple guides just so I know that this is the center here and this is the center here, but then I'm just going to use the pen tool, I guess. I mean, it won't be as exact. I can see rectangles here, so I could probably use the rectangle tool. I could probably create this shape and rotate it and put it here. There's just a lot of different ways to go about doing this, but I'm just going to do it this way. You can do it, actually, since you know a lot about Illustrator at this point, you can kind of do it any way you want. So we know that the pen tool, the third one down, P for pen, will allow us to start like here. And just by clicking, it kind of, the smart guides automatically guide us where we need to be. Now, as you can see, the reason why you might not want to use the pen tool is because it's not super precise. The guides really help. Let's see, I'm just going to move here so that it picks this anchor point up. And then straight, and then up. Oop, that one's crooked. Command Z to undo if you make a mistake. So that's going to go straight, 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 and there we go. Go back to our selection tool. Now you notice that there is no stroke and no fill, so if I clicked away, what will happen? It disappears. Remember, you've got to have one of these on. Since we only need it to be filled this time, I'm just going to select fill, and that is pretty good. It's not perfect, actually. This is fatter than this, so if I were designing this for a real company and not just tracing it to practice, I would try to make these two things perfectly aligned. I could go back in my direct selection tool and just select like these 2 points by selecting around them and then moving this path up so that it's about the right size. I could also fix some of the other things that I see that might be like a little bit glaringly like problematic, like this and this thickness is different than this thickness. So I could either make this line go down, or I can actually make this arrow line kind of move this to the left a little bit so that this is the correct shape. I could use a guide if I wanted to and just make sure that this now aligns with this guide. Oops, don't want to select the guide when we're doing these things. You can select the guide, that's problematic, right? And so there's a lot of things you could do to like really to get this shape to be perfect. So after you've designed it, you can see that this is not a perfect straight line. So again, just direct selection tool for this point, being careful not to select the anchor, and then zooming in, and you can kind of see that now I can just move this guy. Boom, right? But that's going to work for us. Let's continue on. Okay, so how do we approach this one? Let's break it down. Simple shape, circle, and triangle, and a line, and then there's some rounding that happens, and we know that we can do the rounding later. So let's get started with the basic shape of the circle. Something like that. Again, I'm using the space bar to allow me to move it up and down, and then letting go of the space bar, but holding the shift key down to make that perfect circle. We know that we want to be able to see through this, so instead of a fill being black, I'm going to swap this and make the stroke black and the fill transparent. Okay, that's one thing. Next thing we want to do is just to have maybe a triangle here. So let's see, I'm going to make a guide here. And I'm going to get rid of these two guides by selecting them and deleting them. That's from our previous thing, so we don't need that. Let's see, how to make a triangle that works. I mean, pen tool might work on this one, right? Or I think we're going to do that. We're going to just use the pen tool, and I'm just going to go here. I'm kind of overshooting here, like right here. And then I'm going to go over here, and it's going to be a straight line. Remember, I can fix this later. I'm going to go up, over, make this a straight line. By holding the shift key down, that helps it be exactly straight. So that'll make me a perfect straight line, and then finish that shape. I'm going to now modify some of those things so that this path right here is a little lower. So I'm going to use a direct selection tool, the letter A, And I'm going to select this and hold the shift key down. Now I can physically move this entire thing down. As you can kind of see, now I'm going to move this guy over. Holding the shift key down allows me not to accidentally unstraighten this, so holding the shift key. Everything else looks pretty darn good. Like this could be a little lower based on what I'm seeing. So again, I'm going to select this, hold the shift key down, select this, move this down. And at this point, I could use the shape builder tool to knock this out from this shape. But before I do, maybe it's a good idea to put the rounded elements in there, right? So I know we want to round this element. Right here, I know we want to round this just tiny bit based on what I'm seeing. And this one gets a lot of rounding, right? So we're just going to go ahead and round this sucker out. Now notice that this rounded over here, but since that's outside the shape, I don't care. So now we've got this great shape, and what we need is to use it to duplicate for this other side. I'm going to zoom out, and you can see that all that duplicate is just it being rotated. So again, we go to our rotate tool, and this time we're just going to double click the rotate, and we're going to make it 180-degree rotation and hit OK. Oop. Now, the reason this happened is because I only had 2 anchor points selected with my direct selection tool. I'm going to undo that. Go back to my normal selection tool. Just click on it. Also notice that there's no stroke here, so I'm just going to put a stroke in so we can see it. Select it with a normal selection tool, and then double click the rotate tool right here, and then make a copy of that. And again, it has to be 180. Should have remembered that. Hit return. And of course it needs to be a copy. I'm going to do that. I'm having a big problem today. 180 and a copy. Now that I've got that, I'm going to move it into place. So that it is centered. That's why the guide, I made the guide. Hold the space bar. You can kind of see, make sure that that's just perfectly centered. Okay. And at this point, the only other object we need is maybe this area right here. And so we're going to go ahead and make a rectangle and just connect it here. At this point, we'll round this as soon as we finish the shape building tool thing. So let's go ahead and zoom out and select everything. I'm going to get rid of these guides, by the way. They're no longer needed. Go to selecting everything, and then we go to our shape builder tool. And I know that I do not want this. Hold the option key, option key, option key. Don't want that, don't want that. And at this point, our shape is pretty close. We've got some rounding that we can do here. So direct selection, right? Select this point and just directly round it. Select this point. Now here's a trick. I'm going to undo that. If I want this to be rounded exactly like this, I select this and then I hold this shift key down to select both points. And now if I do something to one, it does it to the other. You see how that works? And all 4 points need to be rounded exactly the same way. So I'm going to select all 4 of them. And again, give them a little bit of rounding. And everything else looks the way it's supposed to look. I'm going to go back to my selection tool and flip the stroke to the fill, and lo and behold, here we go. Now just have to group it, Command G if we're doing a keyboard shortcut, and let's move on. So what do we got here? We've got some interesting things going on. This could be easily a shape and a pen tool type thing, because we know with the pen tool we can get these curvatures to kind of work. Is there another way we could do this? I'm not sure. Let's give it a try. I might try to use the curved pen tool. But before we start, we've got our oval. Now I don't think this is, I don't know, it looks like a perfect circle. So I'm going to just get this to be a perfect circle with a stroke. So that's one thing down. Okay, now we could just, again, draw this path, draw this path, draw this. Actually, that would be, the pen tool would be the easiest thing to be able to use to do this, is from what I'm seeing at least. So let's go to our trusty pen tool. I'm going to start on a corner here. By the way, if I start here, you see how it actually produces an extra point on the circle. So you never kind of like start on an existing path if you want to make a new path. You should start like away from that path. So when I do this and then I do this, it'll be a separate, completely separate object. You see what I'm saying? So something to think about. I'm going to double click this so that I can make this a curve again. And we're going to curve that inwards a little bit like this. And then we're going to double click that to give it so that we can make a straight line here. Going to click this. And then here I'm going to click and pull, right? Because we remember how to do this. And then I'm going to double click this. And then we're going to go here and again click and pull until we get the shape about right. And then this has got to go straight, so double click and then click. And then I'm going to go to here. And then I'm going to click and pull until I get the shape that I want. Or remember, less is better. I'm going to zoom in. I'm holding the spacebar and the command key at the same time. This is going to go straight up, so double click. This looks like a straight line, so I'm going to click here. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Here, click, pull, right? Then double click. And then click. And this looks like two things, so I'm going to click here and pull. And then click, and you're wondering, how do I know that thing? Oh, kind of like experience. And then I'm going to finish the shape. Now, as you can see, this could curve in more. So let's direct select this little guy up here. I'm going to just zoom in so we can see it. And I'm just going to move this guy so that it curves in a little bit more. That's what it looks like it's doing. Everything else looks pretty good. I might round these corners after I connect everything with the Shape Builder tool. Yeah, like a little corner rounding here as well. So let's zoom out. Use my selection tool, select everything, then use my shape builder tool, and just without holding anything down, I just and there you go. Look how few points there are for this shape. And now I'm going to go to my direct selection, and I'm going to round. I want this one and this one. So I'm going to just select these two anchor points, hold the shift key, select this as well, and then just this way they all get rounded at the same time, while none of the other ones get rounded. And the same with the hands. We're going to select the hands, and I'm going to give it a slight amount of rounding. There we go. We're going to go back to our selection tool, select the little figure, and I'm going to swap the stroke, and there we go. Okay, we're going along pretty quickly. Our next project looks like something that we can flip across this line. So what we can do is just get started by actually adding a guide by pulling it away from the ruler. By the way, if you forgot how to get the ruler, Command R will open up that ruler for you. And it looks like we got 2 circles that have a thick width, a line that goes down the middle, and then maybe a line that goes here to here. It looks like this shape, it looks like an eyeball shape, like something that we've done before. And then these 2 dot circles were put in after the fact. Like, what could we do? Like, how does this work? Like, one thing that I see that maybe could be the case is it looks like there's like 2 shapes there. It looks like there's 2 circles that are kind of overlapping. Let's see what I'm trying to do here. Make it smaller. So you see how, do you see how that's almost like a circle? Like, do you see how that circle, that line right here kind of works? It just kind of like, it perfectly goes along this element. In fact, if I put another circle here, I could cut it out so that I'd have that perfect shape, which is what I'm going to do. So remember, holding the Option key down and pulling allows you to duplicate the shape. Now, it doesn't look like I have 2 shapes, but in fact, I forgot to put the stroke on. It always goes off. I don't understand it. But now you can kind of see I've got 2 circular shapes, and the way they cross, that gives me that shape that I wanted initially. So we start with that shape, that outline, and I'll use the Shape Builder tool right now just by selecting everything and getting rid of the stuff that I don't care about anymore. And remember how we do that? We hold the Option key down and the Option key down, and now we're starting with a shape that we know where to go on this one. So I'm going to go back to my selection tool, and remember, I'm going to try to get everything to line up with this line. So I'm going to move this shape. Just going to, don't select the guide or it'll move the guide. I'm going to move this shape until it's kind of like it's just right on that line. so it's centered perfectly. There it is. It just kind of snapped when I was able to make it. We know that we're going to need to thicken up that line, in fact, so we're going to go to our properties and increase the stroke until we are happy with it. It should go down a little bit, so I'm just use the arrow to nudge it, right? And that looks pretty good. So our stroke is 7 points. And now if we make a circle, and 2 circles actually, let's go ahead and start. I'm going to hold the shift key down for my circle, and I'm just going to try to get this to be centered and kind of sit perfectly in the center of that other circle. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to select that. Now there, you could just copy and paste this as well. Command C, Command V if you wanted to. And now I'm just going to use my move tool to move it to the bottom. Should go up a little bit, right? And that's about looking pretty good, right? And now the only other things that we need are 2 more circles. So I'm again go back to my ellipse tool, get that circle to be about the right size. Obviously I'm going to switch the stroke with the fill so that we can see it. I'm going to use a direct selection tool. I hit the letter V because that'll allow me to jump from these tools. Zoom out, Command C, Command V. This allows me to, I'm holding the shift key or it kind of knows where it's supposed to go. And then finally, the last thing we need is like a rectangle to cut it all apart. Now remember, this stroke and this stroke are not real objects yet, unlike this where this is an actually filled object. These are just paths, so we're going to have to expand these as well. So don't forget that. But let's go ahead and add our final rectangle down the middle here. And this should be centered on that line. I'm going to swap it again, the stroke, so that it looks like the rectangle. And I'm just going to make sure that that's centered on that guide. That's why we made the guide, is just so we have a place that we know everything is lined up on the center. Okay, let's select this path, and this path. I'm holding the shift key down to select these paths and nothing else. And then we're going to object expand and hit OK. And now we have actual objects that we can actually use this shape builder tool to work with. So shape builder, select everything we want to build, and not the guide though. I'm going to delete the guide. I don't need it any longer. And now we're just going to go to the shape builder, and I'm just going to, without holding anything down, just kind of go across all this black, go across all this black, go across all this. Oops, I made a mistake here. I'm going to undo a couple times. I definitely wanted to get rid of this black stroke, black rectangle first. So holding the Option key down allows me to remove that. And just to make my life easier, I'm going to switch. I'm going to make the stroke black so that I can see what I'm doing, and so hopefully that kind of works. Now I want to get rid of this. Hold the Option key down here and here. Everything else we want to kind of bring it all together, right? So I'm just going to, without holding anything down, I'm just going to use the shape builder tool to kind of, I'm not worried too much about what's going on with the way that it's filling, because I know that I'll just have to, being very careful of course, but just fill this all in after the fact. So this looks good. Obviously I want to get rid of this one, so I'll hold the Option key down and then the Option key down here, as well as for these. At this point all I have to do is select this object and fill it, and then group it. We all know how to group it. Just select everything, Command G to group, and there's our little figure. So that's one way to do it. Another way would have been just to create this one element right here, right? And then just actually we could have reflected it. In other words, we could have used this new tool right here, this reflect tool. We would have selected it, double clicked the reflect tool, and you can kind of see that it just flips it 90 degrees or however you have it set up. And making a copy like that could have allowed you to do something very similarly. But we did it this way, so that's just how it is. I'm just going to go back out here to my main area. Let's take a look. Very similar to this, we're going to obviously use some strokes to create this. Looks like a couple circles. In fact, we can use a circle to create the back circle as well. And maybe this circle, the way that this works is similar to this circle. So maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 circles here used to make the original shape, and then everything else gets removed. We'll put in these 2 dots afterwards. So let's get started. So let's just start with our initial circle and stroke. So I'm going to zoom in so that I can see. Actually, I'm going to hit escape, undo that. Let's get closer. Why am I so far? All right, let's go ahead and hold the shift key down to make our circle, the space bar to kind of place it in the center. Now if I wanted to, I could create a guide, or I could do this after the fact. I'm just trying to get this circle to be about right. I'm going to swap the fill with the stroke, and I'm going to increase the stroke till it's just about the right width. That looks correct. 11 points is going to be my stroke for this whole piece. Let's just see what happens if I just hold the Option key and hold the Shift key down as well. This constrains it so that I don't have to guess. Like if I don't, like if it's here, it'll be slightly off. But holding the Option key duplicates it, and holding the Shift key constrains it. So we kind of see how that works. We've got like this going on. We see that we'll just connect from here to here and here to here to get those lines. So that back one, and then we'll get rid of all this. What about this one right here? Again, I'm going to hold the Option key to duplicate it, and I'm going to hold the Shift key, and it looks like this line, this curve right here is perfectly like the same thing here, just like twice. And then finally, we're going to pull this one over, holding the Option key. And again, holding the Shift key down will constrain it so that it doesn't want to move anywhere. And there is where that will be. So we only need a couple of straight lines to connect things, right? So let's grab a straight line. I'm just going to make one. So what I did here is just pull the straight line, and I know that the 11 stroke was the previous stroke that I had. And I'm going to rotate this. Holding the Shift key allows me to move it just like that. And you'll notice it wants to snap. And I'm going to zoom it in here. And the idea, I'm going to make it a little bit shorter, holding the Shift key down. And we want it to intersect. Now, I wish I could see the outlines for these circles, because right now that stroke is like killing me. And I know that if I were to look at it, I'd want this to actually touch, like this to be to here and that to be there, right? So we want these to kind of connect. So let's see, what we could do is we could view and show, where is it located? Did they move it? They sometimes move it. Nope, none of the, oh, here it is, view outline, Command Y. When we do that, it allows us to actually see the outline. Now everything is still working the way it's supposed to work, but this allows us to like see the outline so that we can actually pull these points exactly where we want them to be, because we know that that's going to be what we want. I'm going to hold the Option key down, duplicate that, and then I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And then again, we're going to want one here, and then we're going to make a corner here. So I'm just going to select this, copy it and paste it, rotate it with my Shift key, put that there. Looks like it intersects perfectly there, and goes to here, and you can kind of see the Smart Guide pulls that so that it knows what's going on. And then I'm going to copy one more and have it hook up to this guy, and also make sure that it's, oops, Command 0, and that it's hooked up here. Let me just see that I knew that it was not perfectly aligned there. Okay, we're going to zoom this out now. Let's get out of this X-ray type mode, right? Let's go back up here to View, and then hit Command Y again. And that allows us to see what we've done. Now, what's going on here? I have no idea. Oh, because our ending caps end here and not here. So that's the only issue that we have so far. Actually, was this one needed? Let's find out. No, we didn't need this top one. We just needed it to go actually to this point. There. And this one moves to this point. There. And then we can always fix this little tiny gap thing later on just by removing the ink points. Okay, so we're pretty much there. Let's turn all these into actual objects by making the strokes solid. So, oh, and I see that I have something. I wonder if this was the one. Let's click. Let's see. Did I need one here? Yeah, I did need one here, but notice how we want to go down and over here as well. I'm going to move these out of the way so you can kind of see. This one's tricky. So we did go down here. We didn't go over here. We went over here. So this one that goes down here, I actually want it to go over and up. Or I just want this one to pull down and then this one to pull over. So I'm going to take this guy, rotate it, holding the shift key down, moving this guy out here, and moving this guy like right here. Is that right? Yeah, we want actually to go all the way to here. I'm going to select that, make sure this is what I want. It looks like we want the up and down one actually to be there. So we do want this one, but we definitely wanted to keep that up and down one. So I'm going to make another one this time. Sorry. Sometimes this is just what happens. And then we're going to move this here. And then we're going to take this path that we had here, and then we're just bring this down as well. There. It'd be nice if that's right on there. There we go. So we'll just fix this little corner thing later. I mean, you could do it now if you wanted to, by just making sure that this is like a little further down, like that. Okay, that's pretty much what we want, and then we'll select everything here and turn it into an expanded stroke, and then we kind of go in and we start removing the things we don't want and keeping the things we do want. So I know I don't want this, holding the Option key down on the shape builder after I've selected everything. Let's see, select everything, shape builder, and so I don't want this, and I don't want that, I don't want this, and I don't want that. I do want all this stuff, right? So I'm going to just select it all as one big thing, right? And I do want these to connect. Good. We want this to connect to this, to this. We want this to connect to this, to this, to this, right? We want these guys all to connect because they look like they're important. This to connect. There's some extra junk here. We want that. We want all this and that. Is that what we were looking for? Or did I make a mistake? We will find out. Oh, I should have like gone up here and gotten rid of these. So I'll just undo a couple times. So this is what we did not want. It's probably good if I just push this whole thing aside. This is like causing me all kinds of like worry here. Alright, so shape builder, after it's all selected, hold the Option key down. We don't want this. We want this. We want it to be like up and over, but we don't want this part. Okay, it looks like we don't want this. We want all that. That looks correct now. And so I'm going to shape build. Maybe it would have been a good idea just to move it aside on a complex shape like this in the first place. Because I can't see, I'm going to do that. And now we see that we've got some issues with little extra points, right? And we know we can get rid of these little guys. You can kind of see there's an extra little area here. So if we didn't want this part, hold the Option key down. Oops, I just deleted everything. Get rid of that. The same with some of the areas up here. Don't miss anything. That's the important thing. So obviously, notice how we've got this line not, we've got too many points here. We can fix this by direct selection, selecting this guy along with the other point, holding the Shift key down here. Shift key, select that, and then if we wanted to, we could move that so that there's a perfect line here. And then we could see what else we've got that we don't want. Getting rid of an anchor point. Remember the minus, and then just removing it. These are both anchor points that were not needed if it's a straight line. And then again, we are seeing that we have got kind of some double points going on. So maybe getting rid of. Nope. I think that is actually a good point. Okay. Well, the only other thing is the easy thing, and you can see what we're going to do is just use an ellipse and center that, and then just hold the Option key to duplicate it. And then I'm going to just make sure that that's centered and that this is centered to that one. And that's it. Okay, that was crazy. Okay, the last two things that we're going to do, or last three things, sorry. This apple looks a little bit like we could use a curve, the pen tool to create it. Now, there is a kind of a curve pen tool that we haven't really worked with so much. It's this third pen tool down, and the way this third pen tool works is, again, you start on a corner, and this is going to, instead of clicking and pulling, watch what happens if I go here and then I go to the next point. Notice how it automatically, I'm not pulling, I'm not clicking, it automatically is creating a curve for me. So like, for instance, I can go here, then I can go up here, and I can go here, and it's creating this pretty perfect curve just from me, just moving around. And then clicking here. Now, just like the pen tool, if I want this to change like the nature of not having another curve here, I could double click it, and now I've got that straight line again. I'm going to swap this so we can see what we're doing. And now I'm just clicking, and then double clicking to make that, again, a corner. So this right here is our basic shape, and we used it using the curve pen tool. I'm going to go to my direct selection and kind of fix some of these elements, right? Like maybe I want to pull this one over here, and you can kind of go through kind of getting each of these elements to kind of be a little bit more perfect. Obviously out here there's some issues, so if I clicked here, I can bring this in here and bring this in, bring this up a little bit, pull this out a little bit. This is like way too high, so maybe grabbing both of these points and pulling them down a little bit. That looks pretty good, right? You got it. Lots of different ways to make this, but we could use the curve pen tool to do it. So we click here once, click here, and click here, and then clicking here automatically makes the curve, right? Double clicking here so that I don't get a curve, and then clicking here in the middle again, and then clicking here, and if it needed be, double clicking this to make it into a point. And so you can see the curve pen tool is really useful because it automatically creates these beautiful curve paths. So if something has a lot of beautiful curves, it's something that you might want to use this curve pen tool for. And again, that's the fourth one down. It's called the curvature tool. I'm going to select everything using, I'm going to group, Command G, swap the stroke, and there is our Apple logo. I think it could be a little thinner, but there you go. let's see. This is a pretty well-known design, right? What do you see when you see this, right? I see this curve right here, maybe a pen tool, right? I see this. I see there's symmetry, so maybe if I did half and then flipped it, because it's going to be hard to be exactly symmetrical here and here. I see this like shape here, and then another triangle shape. So maybe the idea of the symmetry is the important thing. So again, with symmetry, we're going to use a ruler. Let's start with the curvature tool. And again, I'll start here at this point. I'm going to click here. I'm not holding anything down. And then I'm going to go 1, 2. And then I'm going to go here, 1, 2. And I'm going to go here, and then here. And then I'm going to finish it right there. So that's one object that I would love to use, right? And then, because I want everything to line up beautifully, I'm going to just use the rule. I'm just going to pull a guide, and it'll snap to this point here, which is where I want it to snap. And I'm going to pull a guide, and I'm going to put that here, because I know I want this to be, used as a guide. And now I'm going to create the secondary shapes. Zoom out a little bit. And why did this disappear? Yes, we forgot to put a stroke on it. I don't know why that happens, but there it is. Okay, let's make this shape. We could use, just the pen tool for that one. We could just go here. I'm going to zoom in here, and then click here, and then go down here and click here, and then click here, and then go up. And the reason I'm doing this is it's just going to flip everything, so I'm not worried about the other side being perfect, because I'm going to do it a different way, obviously. And then finally, I'm going to click away from the pen tool and click back on the pen tool, and being careful not to click on the path, I'm going to click like here, click to here, and then back to this path. And I know that if I need to pull this out, I can do so. Now this is where it would be nice to actually see what we're doing. I'm going to lower the stroke a little bit, so just to make sure everything looks correct. So I'm going to select everything. I don't need these guides. I'm going to delete them because they're getting in the way. So I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to bring the stroke down just to see if everything looks correct. And I see that that triangle here actually doesn't go here, it actually goes to here. So I'm going to use my direct selection tool. I'm going to click away, click on this guy, and then click this anchor point here. Because I'm going to, remember, use the shape builder tool to remove all this stuff. So now I'm going to think this one goes a little bit more out here. So with my direct selection tool, I know I can move these guys around. Everything else looks pretty good, right? So I'm going to zoom out. So let's go ahead and use the shape builder tool to construct half of this guy. So I select everything. I'm just going to swap it here. Actually, before I do, I'm going to use the shape builder tool and hold the option key down to get rid of this part. And now I know that if I were to flip this around this point right here, it would have an opening here, especially if I were to swap this out. So now it's just a matter of making a copy and flipping it on this, and flipping it and then shape building it together. So let's go ahead and do that. The same thing that is the rotate tool area, there is the reflect tool. So I'm going to select that. Notice it'll reflect around this anchor point. Now, obviously, we can hold the option key down like we did before, click on the path, and you can see that'll flip this around the way we want. So be careful. You want to make sure it's a vertical flip at 90 degrees. But you can and we know that we're going to be making a copy. So I'm going to do that. Boom. It's made. Now I just use the shape builder tool to bring these two pieces together, like that, and that looks like what we were supposed to do. Now the last thing we do, you know it, we group it, Command G, and there is our logo brand. And finally, the last but not the least is the elephant. How would you do this elephant? You've gotten plenty of practice. What do you see? I'm going to let you do it. So that's the end of our tutorial. I will be looking closely at the elephant, seeing if you have learned some of the things that we've taught in this lesson. What did we learn in this lesson? We worked with the reflection tool, the rotate tool. We've worked with the pen tool as well as the curvature tool, right? So we've used the duplicate feature by doing something and then duplicating it over and over again. So we use the expand, object expand. We didn't need to simplify anything this time, but those are some of the things you should know. And again, remember, less points are better, so that it allows you to really modify these shapes. So try to use as few points as possible when you're constructing some of these. Oh, what are these little guys? Gotta delete that. I don't know what that came from. Okay, hope that helps.